Craig. Now, over at Energeticcity.ca, if you haven't noticed, in the past 4, 5, 6 months, we've been doing a new series called Energetic City Investigates, as we've hired an investigative reporter to do deep dives into subjects and issues that are really of note and import to Fort St. Johnians. And our latest version and article of that is on intimate partner violence. So I want this to serve as a bit of a content for you, a warning as well, as we are about to discuss a very serious topic with the author of the article, Energetic City's investigative reporter, Spencer Hall. Spencer, how's it going today?
It's going well, Deb. Thanks for asking.
Hey, thank you very much for being here. So let's talk about this article, which I believe is called Intimate Partner Violence in Fort St. John. I think other words for it that we usually might hear more often is domestic or spousal abuse. Yep. Tell us a bit about this article you've written.
So, kind of going throughout the community a lot, I've heard anecdotally that intimate partner violence or domestic violence is a significant issue in Fort St. John, which made me kind of want to look into it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And, it's quite it happens a lot more than I think that most people consider, especially in rural areas. And part of that is, in rural communities like ours, you're more likely to see the person that's causing, the abuse, and people are more likely to kind of know them personally. So that is one of the things that kind of came up in my investigation. That is one of the reasons why people in rural areas kind of stay in these relationships.
Mm-hmm. And I should say, in the article itself, I mean, really, other than experts on the issue, there's only one local person who's quoted and comes out and says who they are. Kind of everything else you heard from people was really anonymous. They said, I'll tell you my story, but I don't want you to say who I am, in part because of that fact that people will know who they are and know who their spouse or the person who was abusing them was, I guess, eh?
Yeah, well, and it's not just the abuser that people don't want to share because of the abuser. Some of them didn't want their parents to know that they'd been through something like this. Or, I think, I ended up making a social media post trying to get, folks to come and tell their stories. And within 24 hours, I had 7 people in my inbox,
wow.
and both men and women.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an issue that I think has been generally classified as a women's issue.
Yeah.
But it's actually it's an issue that affects women more so. But I don't know if that's more so because, it likely does affect women more. But one thing that it makes it hard to tell is that men are less likely to report it due to shame, the idea that, men shouldn't be abused by a woman.
Yeah.
So you get into a lot of interesting kind of facts when it comes to intimate partner violence, and that one I think was the one of them that stuck out. There were a lot that kind of stuck out to me in this investigation.
Mm-hmm. Now there's quite a bit of statistics in the article, kind of from the government of Canada, I think the province of BC as well. And I think just in passing, we kind of all have numbers in our head. We hear 4 in 10 people, women specifically, kind of in general will report that they've been abused at some point in their life. I think it's over 3 in 10 for men. But how hard was it to find information locally for kind of statistics in general? Because, of course, we do have services locally who help people, but to find kind of actual hard, if we want to call it numbers evidence, it's a little more difficult, isn't it?
It was a little difficult, specifically to get kind of the crime statistics.
Yeah.
When it comes to local organizations, one declined to talk to me, which is totally okay. But the other one did supply statistics, and we spoke to them in the article. So it was a little difficult just because, again, it is such a small community, and then also trying to get, recent statistics on this. Was a little difficult. It took a long time.
Yeah. So this article's been out for about 5 or so days now. What kind of response have you been getting from people who maybe have said they've read it or maybe come out even and said, you're talking about me in this article? Have you heard more stories like that?
Not so far. Most people who I know who have read it seem to, I don't really have a lot of feedback. We did get one comment a professor I spoke to did use, when we're talking about intimate partner violence, when it's men who are the victims, she used the recent trial of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. So that's really the only comment that I got. But again, that was the professor's example. I'm not too well versed, I suppose, in that trial. But I mean, when it comes to the trial, it was, someone was found guilty. So that's kind of what I was.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, that doesn't surprise you because of sort of the shame and the stigma of talking about this, and especially in a rural location. I guess you probably didn't expect that many people to go, hey, I understand this story because it's happened to me because of that shame and stigma. Eh?
Yeah, well, and I think one thing that stuck with me is knowing how many times it takes for someone who's being abused to report it, and the stats that we have are just the people that report it. It's not everyone that's experiencing it, and that I think is something that I had to remember in the article, was that for every person that reached out to me, there's probably several that saw my post and I don't want to.
Yeah.
So I think
if I remember right, sorry to interrupt, that statistic was pretty jarring. How many times it takes, because it's multiple times generally is what people say they've experienced before they reach out for help, isn't it?
Yeah, according to the executive director of the Ending Violence Association of BC, research, which is significantly old, I think it's a couple decades old now, but they found 14 times it takes somebody to be abused before they actually report it.
Wow. Incredible.
Which they have their reasons to, of course. It's not easy to make a report in navigating the criminal justice system.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to make sure we say that the end of the article talks about what you can do if you're experiencing this, who you can reach out to. I assume it's similar for if you maybe know someone experience it, just kind of where you can reach out to. Can you tell us a bit about that part, and were you able to find lots of resources for people that can help them in this country and in Fort St. John?
Yes. In Fort St. John, we have a few. We have the Women's Resource Society, of course. Community Bridge is another one that offers, relocation services like shelters, resources. And then we also have Victim Link BC, which is you or someone can call Victim Link BC, and they will give you more resources provincially, as well as some advice on how to kind of move forward. But the Fort St. John Women's Resource Society has family law advocates, one of which we spoke to. That's their job. So there are resources out there. And there are a lot, but I think one thing to mention is that they're mostly focused towards women, which, again, because we see so many women being victimized by intimate partner violence, it makes sense. However, it makes it difficult for men who are experiencing that to find gender-specific supports.
All right. Well, it's definitely an article well worth your read. You can read it now over at Energeticcity.ca. Just click on the news tab. You can see the Investigates page there, which has this article and all the articles that Spencer has written so far, including on healthcare as subjects. Spencer, thank you so much for coming on today to talk about this article on a very important topic. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.